Okay, welcome to this webinar, which is on product management and specifically the European perspective of product management. I'm glad to be here today with you in the Product Excellence Network Israel. My name is Ebert and I'm a Managing Director with Vector Consulting Services, which is a global company which is active in product strategy and product development. We have chosen this title of Software Product Management European Industry Perspective for the reason that many of you work in international content, and for that reason also want to understand what is useful, what are typical lessons learned in the European context. And so what I did is I summarized some best practices which we have collected over the past year and have enriched it with benchmarking results from companies in Europe. Mostly these are international companies, multinational companies such as Siemens, SAP, BASF, but also companies which are operating more in a local context such as TomTom. And I aggregated these observations. This is what I want to present over the next 45 minutes. Vector Consulting Services is a consulting company which is globally active. We are part of a group which has 1,200 employees and operate in various industry with a dominance in the software industry. Companies such as Accenture, such as SAP, such as Siemens, Telefonica, etc. engage us for support in product development, product strategy, and change management. My background is having worked in ICT for about 10 years. I'm now since Managing Director of Vector Consulting Services, and for that reason and background on any of the global software and IT topics. Feel free to ask questions either during this webinar by using your chat function, which is on the left side of the screen, or by sending me an email afterwards. I can be reached at christoph.ebert@vector.com, so that you can also ask further on questions which might come up later. The webinar is structured into 3 parts, and I will start with a brief motivation, then go into industry benchmarks, and finally have some summary where we repeat some of the major. Well, if we look to the market situation, one could say, well, European market, this is not really different from any other market. Specifically, if you have the background from Israel, of course, you are geographically very close. Often we, here in Europe, consider Israel part of Europe, so it's a kind of a strange perspective that we would say, well, what is the European market? Speaking to an Israel company, I have in the past worked a lot with Israel companies, did a lot of business in your country. I see practically on a distance, not specific differences. On the end, if we look to market and product management, there are certainly some differences which we can see on a global scheme. Specifically, if I look towards the markets in North America, in Europe and in Asia, with a product management perspective, there are some profound differences between these markets. One major difference is that specifically in the American market, product management is often kind of specific function inside marketing. Here in Europe and also increasingly in Asia, we have a different product management. The product manager is considered a business owner, is considered as a technical expert, is not so much considered a marketing expert. And one of the topics which we look further, and for that reason I also summarized some of the expectations which are also very specific, such as the markets here expect, especially in B2B, that product managers understand a business strategy of the customers and try to translate that to concrete offers, concrete solutions in order to bring value. Also, the markets are strict on a cost reduction. The prices on the same goods fall year over year in a double-digit %, which is quite relevant to how can we make the product cost better, how can we improve the cost structure, and how can the products appear better to the markets. The need for software product management has arisen over the past years. Product management itself is an old discipline, as you all know, so I will not really talk too much about product management. I talk here about software product management. Software product management today, specifically in IT companies, is a clearly defined role. However, in many of our benchmark partners, it's not really implemented well. And so majority of our work in consulting on software product management is really to help companies grow their maturity in software product management and also help to install the role in a way that there is a clear, measurable and tangible benefit. And also for that reason, this is why I emphasize here that the product manager is what we call the embedded CEO. This is a person who is accountable for success and also who has a clear middle management position to not only steer the product but also have a clear ownership on budget and implementing the product towards success. The product manager, obviously in the software field, needs to have a profound technical background, but at the same time, and this is a deficit which we often see, also needs to understand market needs and has to translate the needs of their specific target markets into what would be the offers, what would be the solutions of what they could really bring into the picture being product managers. Let's see now into some of the industry benchmarks. The situation in Europe is that product management for software and IT is of increasing relevance, specifically life cycle perspective. When I speak about life cycle, what I mean is to distinguish the product from the project. We often have here a misunderstanding in terms of what is now the project specific need, which is obviously to deliver content in time with the right quality and in budget, while the product manager goes beyond the individual release or goes beyond the individual product specific project. The product manager has to see the life cycle. He has to see, for instance, different variants. He has to see different releases. He has to optimize feature content in different ways in order to make sure that the product is optimally placed, while also decreasing the overall product cost. For that reason, we have started to distinguish role patterns which we see in different companies. On the horizontal axis, you see either support or leader. Obviously, leader is more strategic. On the vertical axis, you see, is it more marketing driven or life cycle driven? The target of the role is what we see in the upper right corner, which is what we call embedded CEO. It's a person who has a clear focus on making the best business success. For all the others, we see slight differences, and this is what I said earlier about the American market. I see in North America many companies, including very big companies, such as Oracle, for instance, even to a certain degree, companies which have been very long in the B2B market, which would see the product manager more kind of a support function to marketing. Many big IT companies in the United States have positioned the product manager in marketing. Here in Europe, we see product managers increasingly positioned as a parallel function to marketing. They are not part of marketing. They are an own function which typically has not much staff, but which would directly influence these different functions. So if you want, this picture shows already in America we have more the lower half. In Europe we have more the upper half in terms of the positioning. Whether we see the product manager as support or leader, that depends not only on the regional and cultural aspect, but it depends also on the often competencies of product managers in the software field are highly insufficient. Software product managers often are very good in technique, but not good in influencing, in soft skills, in finance skills, etc. For that reason, their management positions them in a support function, which is typically a downward spiral, because if the product manager is in a support function, he's not able to determine the product's destiny. If he's not able to determine the product's destiny, the product will be ultimately a failure, or it will be governed by other parties. To make the long story short, this position here is clearly a more interesting one as if you are a mere trader, but it's not sustainable. Either the product manager really gets in the position of business owner and business strategist, or he will fail as a product manager. And this is what we see in many of the software and IT companies today in Europe. Our benchmark has been looking to several companies which are headquartered in Europe, but in many cases active on a global scale. Most of them are on the B2B in areas such as critical ICT systems, energy, medical, and industry. 5% more than 100,000 people worldwide. The rest is also smaller, which is, we have mixed here feedback from very big companies, but also with smaller companies. The result of our survey, which we did in 2012 and 2013, and which we are continuously updating, is that in the meantime, a majority of the companies which we talk to have the vision that the software product manager is end-to-end responsible for the success of the product. That is, if we go back to our previous picture, he is in the position of a leader in the product lifecycle. This is the perception and the vision of 60 or close to 60% of all the companies. However, if we see to the reality, it's only 1/3 which have actively implemented the vision already. So there's a big discrepancy, but it's clear that the vision comes in front of the reality. So these companies are now moving in a direction they are going to implement this more strong product manager role. Another key topic is that the role of the product manager increasingly evolves towards solution that is not anymore a specific product, but much more the product in a sense. How can it the specific customer needs, the specific market needs? How can it be tailored to these needs? And how can it be bundled with tailored services? In other words, we do not anymore have the product manager who would see a very specific software product, but also try to position the software product together with services to have the positioning in a highly specialized target market. We see often in the meantime in the software business segmentation which go down to a single customer. So this is a unique feature which we have in the technical, in the IT and software market. Interesting enough is that already 40% of the companies which we talk to, which are companies such as Siemens, Thales, and SAP and others, have actually implemented the P&L responsibility already with product managers. Not necessarily this is going well, but at the least this underlines the move which we see here in Europe. First, that the product manager needs to be empowered. Second, that the competencies of the product manager still have to grow in the business dimension, not so much in the technical dimension. what we typically support companies is to improve their product management. So what we ask is also which stage of production of product management do we see in practice. And what we see here is that about 1/3, this is what I said earlier, are in deployment phase of product management. That is, they have a clearly articulated vision, they have a competency ramp-up program, and they support their product managers in the line organization. The other example would be another third is basically not anywhere, they are not even started. A quarter is on foundation, and about 8% are somewhere in between the foundation pilot. I just received one question which fits in here that asks who is responsible for innovation. Now obviously there's never a thing which is in one head, but it's clear that innovation for products in the software and IT sector is typically either technically driven, then it's the technical function together with the product manager, or it's a specific market need. For instance, you come back from a customer visit or from a fair, you say, well, I want to introduce this kind of feature set, and in that case it would be more marketing oriented innovation. So what do we see in practice? That the technical innovation of product is clearly the responsibility of the product manager. The marketing-related innovation is the responsibility of the marketing or product marketing manager. But when it comes towards implementing specific technologies, the implementation is with the R&D or with the software function. Performance measurement of the product manager is typically on annual such as sales and growth fixed. The very big majority of product measured in profit and loss. So that's also a key feature, different from United States of America. Here in Europe, they always have either market share or more than market share, the P&L, which is one of their top performance indicators. I'm working with product managers who also have the innovation as a key indicator. That gets me back to the previous question. For instance, what we emphasize with software product managers is often to have the average age of a product, KPI, or the degree of how often is the product quoted as leading the pack. That is the advantage of a product compared to others, which is also used in B2C market. What are specific industry needs in Europe? I have divided this into 4 categories just to give it some structure. We have first the culture impact. One might argue that well, there is a Western culture, kind of a heritage from some historic traditions, but what we see is Europe is extremely heterogeneous. Specifically, the Anglo-Saxon work often think Europe is like UK, which is not the case. UK in a way is rather exotic from a European perspective, which is something which is historically clear because UK is an island. UK traditional very close connections to United States. UK always tries a bit different than the rest of Europe. To make a long story short, for those of your English-speaking background who look primarily to UK, I should say UK is not the representative European country. European is a very heterogeneous mix of countries. When we talk here in Europe about culture clusters, we distinguish Scandinavia, Mediterranean, Eastern Europe, and if you want, Central Europe, but not UK as a role model. A second issue is to adapt to the local culture. Again, this is a very specific topic. you want to do business in Rome, you should behave than Romans. This is what we have as a traditional saying. In other words, try to not generalize too much and say, well, I'm now in France. This is pretty much like Spain or Italy. Indeed, seen from your perspective, are very similar. However, the countries are treated uniquely, especially if they are proud on their culture. So we always have some specific differences. Also, there are organic boundaries, which means that certain countries behave different. That does not mean that we don't have clustering. I mean, many companies today are multinational. Also in Europe, they approach many markets at the same time and behave differently. For instance, one of our clients, which is a market leader in specific consumer goods, is very clearly thinking like an international company. It reminds me very much to a UK company, although they are based in the center of Europe. But when they are active locally with their customers, they try with their product managers and product marketing to behave very much like the local country and the local culture. Another topic is market. So one thing is certainly to understand the market-specific behaviors. The obstacle for many of us is that we do not get far with English communication. English is good in it is in the Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. It's good in Germany. It's medium in Eastern Europe. It's not so good in Southern European and Mediterranean countries. So in those countries, certainly the need is high to also speak a local language, which is necessary because we need to visit local fairs to get into the local markets. The development practices certainly are not country-specific. That would be stupid. But generally speaking, we see a growing move, especially in the smaller projects with short life cycle time, into iterative and agile development. Most of my customers in the B2C and in the application domain are today in agile work, specifically Scrum is used heavily. The concepts of backlog and sprint, user stories, etc. This is something which a product manager has to control. It's one of the responsibilities of the product managers. We have sometimes in companies some struggle. What's the difference between product owner and product manager? The short answer is the product manager has the overall business responsibility. The product owner has the specific development responsibility. The product manager looks into the P&L. The product owner looks into the architecture. So there's a lot of difference, and that explains why we want to have both roles, a product manager and a product owner. Looking to lifecycle, see the waterfall still dominant, specifically in the embedded sector, which is rather strong in Europe, but also in the larger projects like consortia, where you have different companies which work at the same time on a project. Finally, not to be not considered is that we have a lot of legal constraints here in Europe. The challenge is that the legal systems are different. We have some primary differences, which is historic, such as we have the Anglo-Saxon legal, which is dominant in the UK, of course, and also some of the more Benelux and Scandinavian countries in the northern world. We have the traditional Roman system, which is obviously more in the Mediterranean, and we have some mix, such as the German system. Legal, for instance, has been translated even into many of the Chinese laws, which back in the early 20th century have been carbon copy from from German law. We have major flavors, which is Anglo-Saxon, Mediterranean, Roman, and German legislation, but then also a lot of local specifics. In other words, if, for instance, you get into discussions about IPR or NDA or this kind of typical software-related topics, it's wise to get at least into the local legislation. By the way, I sometimes get questions which are so cryptic that I will not answer them. So if you want to send a question, please send it in a, let's say, a complete sentence, allows me to see what you mean. And if I see a question like, is something working, I'm not sure what you mean. So rather you type a little bit longer, but allow me then also to understand what you mean. We have in the legal domain also a lot of IPR specific topics, specifically IPR protection. We have in Europe the ETCO, the European Patent Office. At the same time, we also have the specific local patent offices, and that should also be distinct in the other. Privacy, you are certainly aware in terms of security, plays a very important role in IT. You might have seen that the biggest challenges of Facebook and Google happen in Germany, France, of course. These countries are extremely prudent on the role of privacy in their countries, and many of the, let's say, activities of companies like Facebook and Google, which are taken for granted in the USA, are highly debated in European countries with the effect on the European Union level. We have a very strong awareness on privacy, and that is also driving legislation more and more. To some degree also driven recently by the big NSA scandal, where we see here extremely strong opposition to United States, rather relaxed security behaviors, which here in Europe, except in the UK, but in Europe nobody would really accept and observe the very relaxed USA security and aspects. So that's also a very specific culture flavor if you want to be in business and implement IT in Europe. The environmental sectors obviously depend on the culture, on the education, on the competencies. Here's one customer quote, which in a few words would say, well, we have traditionally not a consistent definition of product management. Product management is either development or marketing. Now they have started with software product, and more and more they see that product management needs to be changed in parallel to the whole culture. In other words, we see in Europe a move towards product manager as the owner, but that doesn't fall out of the blue. That needs a lot of change management, that needs a lot of patience, because senior managers not entrust the business to a product manager who doesn't perform, who has not the right competencies. And for that reason, they are looking for the support by companies like Vector. Let me get to a brief summary, so we still have time for some questions. The specifics in the European market on product management is culture. We have three mainstream culture, which is UK, which is Scandinavian, which is the Mediterranean, and if you go a little bit to the east, which is the Eastern European or Central European. Market research is absolutely necessary, but more difficult because of that very specific market background, languages, etc. The development practices increasingly see agile practices and the combination of agile and waterfall. And we have a lot of very specific legal constraints which are governed on three levels, namely the multinational European level, which is the European Patent Office, the European Union with their laws, the country which has their own legislation. Country level definitely dominates legal system in Europe, and then also the smaller state level, which for some type of software application is relevant. Our proposals is, first of all, to systematically the expansion into Europe, not to simply say, well, let's go to Europe, but also have a clear plan, which countries, which markets, in which order you want to introduce, to respect the culture variety across these different markets, obviously to think and understand markets and segments. It's not so much about country. I mean, if we do business in Austria or Germany or maybe parts of Switzerland, maybe Hungary, the culture is pretty similar, although these are different countries. However, it's very different compared to Italy, for instance, or Spain. So what we look is typically the clusters, not the country, and then we look into the market segments. The market in some of the Mediterranean countries like southern Italy, like Spain, is pretty much not existing, while in other countries, like in Scandinavia, it has a rather big share on the cross-national product. Then number 4, to prepare for specific target markets and industries. It makes no sense to say, well, I want to grow in Europe. You have to say, I want to grow in this market segment with these kind of actions. And finally, to consider legal constraints and their variability across the major clusters in Europe. Clearly, these different, let's say, background from our own project experience show that growing product management, product strategy needs profound change management in order to be successful in Europe. Obviously, we bring in the experiences to handle these topics. Another client which I found quite relieving, especially also because of the software background of that company, is that after having worked, this was an American company, by the way. It's an American company which is active in communications. They introduced their products to Europe. They worked with us, and they understood the necessity, first of all, that product management and role from marketing has, which was our strong recommendation. They did this transformation very successfully, with the benefit that they now have a real 360 view on the different activities which are successful. Second, they ramped up the competencies of their product managers in order to fulfill this key role, and they then also say, well, they have received an investment, return on investment from their strengthened product management role, specifically with the support of our best practice to be successful in Europe. And that certainly outweighed the cost which they have taken. Some summary of best practices also in our book Global Software and IT, which has recently reappeared in Wiley with a fully reworked edition. Is a very insightful combination. Here's a quote from an Indian company using the book. Especially for distributed teams, for distributed markets, that's a real good piece of advice. Well, and that is bringing me to the end, to our discussion. Certainly, we are happy to support you, and I guess if there is still questions, we have now time to discuss your questions. You might simply send by chat some of the remaining questions, and for the meantime, I thank all of you for listening, and give 1 minute for taking some more questions. Well, one question which I have received just in parallel was related towards what is the approach if you come from a small local market like Israel? Most of you have done business in the United States. So how would you now grow into Europe? My recommendation is if you, I see two lines. Either you are a specific target market. Sometimes you want to operate in very zone, which allows them to grow in different time zones. This is an approach which in Israel companies would take, specifically if they also have, let's say, some roots into Eastern Europe. Many companies work in Eastern Europe, do some outsourcing with Poland, Hungary, etc., and then they would go westward stepwise. The other approach would be that you would opportunistically start with a certain market where you say, well, here's a specific target customer which we have experiences with. This customer would then be on which we want to start without a lot of marketing, but simply having a footprint in Europe with one or two important names, and then you use these customers in order to advertise and get more customers interested in the product into your business. There's always the risk, especially for the smaller companies, that if they look very attractive, they of course are also the target for acquisition. So that was also a question I had received in parallel. If you are successful, but that's the same in the American market, you also want to be prepared that companies try to acquire you one way or the other. So you also should have a strategy in what is your own vision with growth and with strategic partnership. Sometimes it's much easier to partner from the beginning with a very big European IT company, and with such partnership then stepwise grow into new markets. That is also an approach I recommend to not so, let's say, big from countries like Israel, that they would partner with a big player in the European market, such as in the IT domain SAP, or in the banking domain Accenture, etc., and then use this kind of partnership in order to build up the sales channels into the different European countries. So these are a couple of answers to questions. There's certainly more, but I would then also suggest that you contact me with my email, which is written here again, christoph.ebert@vector.com, and I appreciate your listening to this webinar, and wish you good success with your business in Europe. Thank you.